Well, good evening, everyone. I am the Ralph Man. You can call me Ralphie or Ralph Man or Ralph or just about anything, really. And back here, taking care of the sound and all the geeky type stuff is Dr. K. Say hello, Dr. K. Uh, Dr. K. Come on, show your face, Dr. K. I'm here. I'm here, right here. He's gonna take care of the show. I'm staying back here. Got things to do, but it's going to be a good show regardless. Okay, and you'll notice that Kevin the Haunted Doll Kane is not here, and neither is Mortimer Snurd. Uh, Kevin went and got his second Pfizer shot, and it just made him quite ill. He didn't get any sleep last night. He's had a rough time, so hopefully he'll be back with us next week here at Abnormal Alabama. Remember, we're streaming this live both on YouTube and Facebook right here, Abnormal Alabama, YouTube and Facebook. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, Abnormal Alabama, well, you're missing out. Come over there, hit the subscribe button. There's no effort, no money involved. Just do it. Abnormal Alabama. So, to make things more interesting, instead of listening to myself with maybe an occasional word or two from Dr. K, we decided we're gonna play a replay of an interview that Dr. K did 6 years ago with Kim Johnston, who is an author and also a paranormal investigator from right here, well, Chelsea, Alabama, right here. And she's written several books, Haunted Shelby, and I think she did one, Haunted Talladega. A lot of haunting stories. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview from 6 years ago. We'll be back, of course, next week live with even more good stuff as we do every Tuesday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Are you ready? Let's roll.
Blog Talk Radio.
This is March the 11th, 2015, and this is another edition of Abnormal Radio where we talk about things that are considered abnormal. And all our interviews, all our shows are archived on our Facebook page. Please go there, look in Facebook for Abnormal Radio, hit the like button and follow us there. And tonight is one of the most, I'm more excited about this show tonight than I've been excited about interview that I've done in a long time. I have a very, very special guest who's written a book about the very county that I live in, and full of rich history, and it's available not only from the major bookstores, Books A Million and Barnes and Nobles around town, but also on Amazon.com, and you can get it in digital format as well. Haunted Shelby County author tonight with me for 2 hours. Kim Johnston is going to talk about all the things that go bump in the night here in Shelby County. And I believe she's also writing a book coming up soon to be published about haunted Talladega County. So welcome to the show, Kim. How are you this evening?
Hello, thank you. I'm doing very well tonight.
Great. We finally have some beautiful weather. It's a lovely night, and I hope that we have a lot of people tuned in. I tell you, I downloaded your book on my Kindle from Amazon, and I haven't had an opportunity to read every bit of it, but you're a good writer.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
And clearly you've done a lot of research, and you clearly have a passion. Let's start, Kim, if we could, at the beginning of what got you interested in what you're doing. And I also understand you formed a paranormal group here in Alabama, and I know that we're going to share some interesting stories as the time goes by here this evening. So first of all, what got you started in your interest in the paranormal?
Oh gosh, if I go way, way back, my grandmother, my Meemaw, had this so very interesting story of a near-death experience that she had. She was always very sick as I was growing up, and as well as when my mom was growing up. She actually had to have one of her lungs completely removed because it was diseased. And while she was on the operating table having this lung removed, she rose up out of her body, had an out-of-body experience, could see herself on the operating table. She floated down the hospital hallway, and she overheard her husband having a conversation with her son, who was an adult by this time. And then she proceeded to float up into heaven. She thought she was dead. She thought she was gone. And when she came to and made it out of surgery, she was able to recount that telephone conversation word for word. And it just astounded the doctors and her family. And growing up and hearing her tell that story every time, it just opened my mind to, other possibilities, that the world is more than what we can see. So, but I never really aspired to be a paranormal researcher. I've always loved writing, though. I never had what I would consider an encounter with spirits or ghosts growing up. But when we bought a house in Chelsea, Alabama in 2008, it was a brand new house. No one ever lived in it. So I never had any concern or worry that it might be haunted. But, some weird stuff started happening that I couldn't explain. So we lived in that house for about 5 years. And, that was the time when I started my paranormal research team. Our family went through some challenging times dealing with these experiences that we were having. while we lived there. And, it just became a goal of mine to help families that were going through that kind of situation. And from there, it turned into a book. And now I'm on my second book with my Paranormal Team's co-founder, Shane Bosey. And so, it's just been a wild ride.
That's very exciting. And, there's so much rich history in Alabama that part of the paranormal research, I know, makes you dig into this history. So it's not just ghost stories as such. You get to share so much of Alabama's rich history.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, that's almost the best part is the history. And it's funny because history was probably my least favorite subject when I was in school, and even in college. I was a straight A student all throughout college, but history, I got D's. And so, to just be a true lover of history and to be relearning some of those stories that you learned in fourth grade Alabama history and in college, to really appreciate that now. I'm just kind of kicking myself for not loving it sooner.
It's never too late. And, a lot of it has to do with your teacher, I think. I often share a story. I went to my grade school up in Athens, Alabama, and my sixth grade teacher, my favorite teacher of all 12 years, was a lady, what I call the quintessential old maid school teacher, Miss Davis. And she was my history teacher. And she was so excited about her subject that she would throw spittle from her mouth at the front row as she talked. And of course, the kids would always ask, Miss Davis, why do we have to study this boring stuff? And of course, her response was always, so we don't make the same mistakes our forefathers did. And that woman was so excited about her subject, and as I've gotten older and tuned in to more of Alabama history and really traveled the state, it's really exciting to learn the things around here. And I tell you what, Kim, it's really exciting that somebody like you is out there that's taking these stories and putting them out in a book and sharing these stories, because the way it's presented helps the way people will tune in to what the history is all about.
Absolutely. And it's a way to get our children excited and interested in history because they love the ghost story part of it. So it's kind of like tricking them. It's kind of like hiding the vegetables in their mac and cheese or something like that. It's kind of tricking them into really coming to love something that can be kind of boring and disinteresting if you don't present it correctly. So I love that. And the children that I've been able to interact with, going to these different schools, and I go to speak, man, they will sit and talk as long as you'll let them. They just have so many questions. And I just think it's fantastic that I'm able to spark some excitement in those children about history.
Well, Kim, we've got a lot of territory, no pun intended, to cover in these 2 hours. And there's so much I want to talk with you about tonight. And first of all, how long has it been since you formed your paranormal group, and what is the name of it?
Okay, I formed SCARE in 2012. So it stands for Spirit Communications and Research. And you can go to our website at www.scareofal.com. And I've been researching, doing the paranormal researching though since 2011. I started out learning the ropes with a different team in the Birmingham area. And I just felt like I could do it better. I felt like, with my background in customer service and psychology, because my degree is actually in psychology, So I just felt like that, I could probably do a better job. And so I was working with Shane at the time, my co-founder, and I talked to him about, going out on our own. And he was all for it. And that's how Scare was born. It was just the two of us. And then soon after, it was, several more people who decided to quit the team that we had been on and to come follow us and be a part of what we were doing. And, most of them are still there with me today. And we have a great group. We go out all over Alabama and we help families that are dealing with paranormal problems. We have a medium on our team who helps us, and he's been our mentor. He has over 20 years of experience doing blessings and house cleansings and paranormal research. So we would be kind of lost without him. So I give him much of the credit. His name is Blaine, and he's been a wonderful addition to our team.
That's great. Now, I know from reading some of your material and about some of your background on the internet, you and I have spent the night in some of the same places. Sloth Furnaces. Sloth Furnaces is one. We spent the night there. And so let's start with some good stories. That's what people love, is they love these good ghost stories. Tell us about your experience at Sloth Furnaces.
Oh, wow. My very first time ever going was with a dear friend, and we went during the day, and she said, she gave me a great tip that if you go into the Sloth Furnace office and sign a form and pay your $20, they'll open up the boiler or the blowing engine room, and you'll get to go in there and just tell them that you want to take photos, which is what we were doing. But we also took our voice recorders and a little bit of equipment in our backpack too. So they let us in the blowing engine room, and we go down below underneath. That seems to be where a good bit of the activity is. And we just started taking photos and recording. And that was the first time I ever experienced a disembodied voice. It was just so wild. We were the only people in there. And my friend Amanda was telling me about the episode of Sloth Furnace on Ghost Adventures. And she was saying, this is exactly where Zach was sitting, when he, something happened. He was trying to get in touch with Flag, the infamous Flag, who's the mean ghost out there that likes to rough people up. And as soon as she said that, you just hear a voice out of nowhere. And she was like, what was that? And when we played it back on our voice recorders, it almost sounded like the voice was saying Flag or Zach. I couldn't tell if it was Zach or Flag, but it was so cool that we heard that. And then our equipment started going crazy, and we had some other EVPs that were captured we were only there for like 20 minutes, and I came away with several EVPs and all of that activity. And it happened during the day. And a lot of people think you have to go at night or do paranormal research at night, which is just not the case, especially in a place like Sloth, which is so incredibly haunted. The activity goes on at all hours of the day and night.
What would you consider, Kim, the most haunted place in Alabama that you've been to, the most active?
Oh, good question. Definitely Sloth would be on the list, because you can go there in just about any time and get evidence. We always come away with something day and night. I would say we had a fantastic opportunity to go inside Caraway Hospital about a year ago. And that place was incredibly creepy and active. Shadows, even had just, chains rattle at us, which is which is kind of like old school ghost. But
the good black and white movie.
yeah, but that that was actually pretty kind of scary. I don't normally get freaked out or scared on investigations. I'm usually the calm one and pretty cool and collected. But that really unnerved me. That unsettled me to have those chains clang so hard against the wall and no one else being in there with us to cause that. We left that area kind of quickly. Some of the people in our group were reciting the Lord's Prayer as we left because we were all quite frightened. But Caraway Hospital has to be at the top of the list too.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of like Zach. I kind of get in their face and challenge. But you don't do that.
I don't. I kind of feel like that these spirits were people too, and I go in there with the attitude that I'm going to treat them the same way that I would want to be treated. So that's just kind of my take on things, and I still get evidence. I still get good responses. A lot of times I use humor, which is a good trick. If you're not getting much activity, tell a joke or just joke around with them, and sometimes you'll get a response that way.
So you really try to, for lack of better terms, humanize the entities, whatever they are.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I don't really know who they are or what they are. But when you go into a place like, for instance, down in Montevallo, the Aldrich mining community, there was more than 50 miners killed in those mines. And you walk through the graveyard and you see their graves, which are mostly unmarked. There's only one grave marker out there, and it's for the only white man that's buried in that cemetery. And when you experience that, you just kind of, I feel compassion. I feel sorry for them. And, that's the way, I'm going to approach the investigation. I'm going to be nice in my interactions. They worked hard. They died tragically.
Would you consider yourself then an empath?
Maybe not as much as some of the other people that are on my team, but sometimes I do pick up on those emotions. I think the first time I ever experienced that was the very first time I ever investigated, and we were inside the Lear Tower, which is the former Thomas Jefferson Hotel in downtown Birmingham, and up on the 20th floor. I mean, the place back then is just completely trash. Copper thieves had gotten in. Vagrants had lived in there for many years before they finally secured it. So every floor is completely trashed, and broken windows have let the wind and rain in. So it's just a complete mess. But we went through every floor, and we finally reached the top floor, which is the 20th floor, and that's where Bear Bryant had his special suite for when Alabama played at played their games in Birmingham. So we're sitting outside his suite, and you can't even get in there because it's just packed with old furniture and old chairs that's just been using it as storage. And all of a sudden, I just felt so overwhelmed with sadness. And I've never, I think that was the first time ever recognizing that I wasn't really feeling my own emotions, that this was coming from something else or somewhere else. I can't explain it, but it was just so odd. And I think that's the first time I ever remember feeling that way. And it kind of gave me the idea that I might be an empath, but I don't I think some of the other people on my team are a lot better at that, or more in tune with it than I am.
Do you feel, now of course we're talking about another realm, but on the human, the very real flesh and blood side of things, do you feel that you're an empath dealing with another living human being?
Oh, yes, I think I have experienced that one other time as well. I could probably think of more times, but yeah, I was just feeling really strange, and I really couldn't put my finger on it, why I was feeling this way. And when I was at work, and I just happened to stop by and talk to a friend for a minute, and when she was telling me how she was feeling that day, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm feeling her emotions and not mine, because it makes no sense why I would feel this way.
That is, and I just wonder, of course, I've had an interest in, a great part due to my religious background. My father was clergy, and let's be real, when you're in that heavy a spiritual experience, it's all supernatural. Anything out of our realm is supernatural. So I was always prone to have a great interest in these things, and then my mother's mother added fuel to that fire because she had a great sense of humor, and Halloween was her favorite holiday. So I kind of got it from both sides. But you, I'm a like a Mulder Files. I want to believe. I have this huge skepticism. But the flip side of that, Kim, is that I've had these extraordinary experiences that I cannot explain, that a lot of people would say, how could you not believe if you've had these experiences?
Yeah, that's exactly my experience too. I want to believe, but I never really had any proof or any experiences to, I guess, make me a believer until I moved into that house in Chelsea that I mentioned earlier. And I started getting woken up at night by, I don't know. I mean, it felt like someone touching me, poking me, pulling on me. And I'd wake up and I'd look around and no one's there. So, and then that escalated to the strangest and most fantastic and wonderful experience I've ever had. One night I woke up, same sensation that I was being pulled. Something had a hold of my feet, and then it had a hold of my arms, and I was really frightened at first. And then all of a sudden, I have no other way to describe it, but it has pulled me out of my body, and I'm standing there at the foot of my bed. And then it just takes me on, and I'm floating through my house, going through the walls, just like a spirit might do. And it was just the craziest experience of my life. And that's really what started it all for me. And I don't talk about it a lot because people are going to look at you like you have three heads, that you're just crazy if you say, you've had an out-of-body experience, that you floated through your house. So I don't really talk about it a lot, but that is the defining moment that started this journey for me.
Kim, it is the bottom of the hour, and every 30 minutes I like to give my guests the opportunity to shamelessly self-promote, give out your website, where they can find your book, your social media. Just put it out there so people know what they can do to find you.
Okay. Well, the website is www.scareofal.com. I'm also on Facebook under Haunted Shelby County, Alabama, and Haunted Talladega. Let's see, my book is available at Amazon. And if you're in the local Birmingham area, you can find it at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. and Alabama Booksmith has signed copies. So all those places carry it. And the newest book, Haunted Talladega County, that I'm writing with Shane, is coming out this summer, early fall. So I don't have a release date for it yet, but it should be in the August-September timeframe, just in time for Halloween. And we'll be doing many events and book signings come September and October. So check us out and subscribe on our website, and you'll be kept up to date on all of the events that are coming up.
And I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but you're still looking for stories out of Talladega County?
I am. It's never too late to add something, especially if it's a really good one with a lot of history to it. So we would be glad to talk with anyone that wants to call in tonight or contact me later on through social media or through our website. We would love to hear your stories. Maybe we can add it to the book. That's
great. And we're not going to take the callers right now, but the number is, if you want to get in line, is 516-387-1801. That's 516-387-1801. And let's reserve that, please, if you've got stories out of Talladega County. And in the last hour of the show, we'd love, or Kim especially, would love to hear your stories. And then if they're exciting enough for her, she'll, I'm sure, want to pursue that. And by the way, if you call in and you've got your phone blocked where I can't see your number, I will not take your call. I've got to be able to see your number before I'm going to let you on the air. So that's because Kim, unfortunately, I get some crazy people on here sometime and I have to hang up on them.
That's perfectly understandable. I get some crazy phone calls too.
Yeah, like as if I'm not crazy enough on my own, right?
Yeah.
The what we're dealing with and the things you do are the same things. When I was a kid, and of course I'm probably old enough to be your grandfather, if not great grandfather here, but we grew up with the old black and white Dracula movies and Frankenstein movies, and Halloween was a different thing than what we see today. But you always have these questions. I remember when I was preteen in my little twin bed in the back of the house seeing the Shadow Man, and I'm sure you're familiar with what the Shadow Man is.
Oh, yes.
And so that sticks in my head to this day. After all those years, I still have that image of the Shadow Man with that hat on his head, just that silhouette figure. Much later in life, within the last decade, a friend of mine, her husband had passed away. Something was hovering over her bed. So I've got, like you, certain equipment that we use. One of them's a night vision camera, digital camera that take pictures in total dark without a flash. And I took a series of pictures when she was not there, looking into the bedroom. And out of a series of pictures came, boom, the Shadow Man leaning over her bed. And there's just a lot of interesting things that I just don't have answers for. After your research and your interest in this subject, of course, I know your paranormal group is fairly new, but where does your research lead you and what you believe and what's happening?
I don't really know. I've actually heard just one interesting theory on what that hat man is, the Shadow Man who wears the hat. I've seen him as well. He came and visited me for a few nights in my house in Chelsea. He would lean in. He was standing in the bedroom doorway, and about 10 o'clock every night he would start leaning in and kind of peer in at us, and then step back, and then he would lean back in. So it's kind of eerie, but by this point, I had already started paranormal investigating. I was kind of used to, some curious spirits, visiting me every once in a while. But one of the interesting theories that I've heard about this Hat Man is that it's some kind of government program where, they've taught people to do remote viewing and, actual protection. And it's actually people, doing this and practicing this. But I really don't know. That's just one interesting theory. That my experience with the Hat Man was, with this Shadow Man, was that I had seen him for a couple of nights. I didn't mention it to anyone, especially not my husband, because he, during that time, he would not talk to me about my paranormal experiences. It really freaked him out. So I definitely didn't tell my husband about it. So I just was like, every night kind of brushing it off. Well, one morning he wakes up after, a few nights of me seeing this guy, and he says, "Honey, I had this weird dream last night that there was a man, a very tall man wearing a hat, standing in our bedroom doorway." And I immediately perked up and was like, "Oh no." And he said, then this man, came into our room and he stabbed you. And he was like, "I was trying to fight him and get him away from you, but he just stabbed you." And I was so upset. And of course, I was just beside myself. I was kind of freaked out that, here's this man that won't have anything to do with anything paranormal. And he's telling me this dream about, something very similar that I'm seeing every night. So nothing ever happened, thank goodness. But it was just so strange.
I used to do a lot of throughout my career as in the role I play in life. I was around a lot of funeral homes, and one up in Nashville, very old, 150-year-old funeral home outside Centennial Park. If you're familiar with Nashville and West End up there, so old a funeral home that the elevator that took you down in the basement, where they had the coffins and the gurneys and whatnot, you had to pull the gates together and push the button and go down there and whatnot. And people would ask me, because I'd be there a lot alone at night with these corpses, and people would say, "Aren't you scared?" And this was when I was younger, and it's like I'm more scared of the living than I am the dead.
Yes, me too.
So, but I've got, and I don't want to take away this. I enjoy sharing these stories, Kim. I don't want to take away from your side. I hope you don't mind me injecting some of my stories into this as we talk.
No, I love this stuff. So go right ahead.
I'm looking at the table of contents of your book that I downloaded on my Kindle, Haunted Shelby County, Alabama, and it's amazing. This is just one county. This is one small area of Alabama, and you come up with so much content here. How long did it take you to research this book?
It took me about a year to do the research, and the funny thing was, being my first book, when I signed the contract, there's a clause in there that says the book will be 30,000 words. That's the minimum. And I had no idea how many pages or how much work that would be. So I only originally planned for about 15 chapters. And in the end, I needed at least 25, if not more, to get that word count. So at the very last minute, I was really having to hit it hard and do a ton of interviews and try to get some more stories. So, I like to say that, I wrote half the book basically in the last, 3 weeks before the due date.
You're like me. You're a last minute person.
Yeah.
So you've got, and I'm going to read, I don't want to give your book away, but I want you to give enough information to make people want to buy your book, okay? You've got these chapters about Montevallo, Calera, Harpersville, Shelby, the Shelby Hotel, the old Shelby Cemetery. Kim, I'm a morbid person. I love cemeteries. Don't ask me why, but I get fascinated with cemeteries, and I've done some ghost hunting, if you will, and a lot of photo taking in cemeteries. The old Shelby Cemetery, can you give us a teaser about what this chapter is about?
Sure. This is just one of those stories that came up just from, I went to go interview a man in the Shelby County area. He wanted to remain anonymous because he is a small Baptist church minister, and he just felt like his congregation didn't need to know that he loved ghost stories and was telling me all these tales. So, but I went to talk to him about a relative that is in the book as a ghost, and he was filling me in on some of those details. And he said, "Oh, by the way, Old Shelby Cemetery is definitely haunted. There's something there." He said he was out there. He loves genealogy. He loves documenting, some of where his ancestors are buried. So he was out there by himself one day, and he was, just taking some notes in a little notepad, and he felt something rush up behind him. And he turned around, and, nothing was there, but he felt like this thing was seeking him throughout the cemetery. He took his mother and father back, who were elderly, and he wanted to show them the grave. And his mother actually fell into a grave while they were there. It's just so awful. I mean, she fell up to her hip, up to her waist, into a grave. So he felt like, this spirit meant them harm. And, he doesn't like to go there anymore. So we thought, well, let's go check it out. I'm not sure if there's really something there or not. But I took my team out there one night, and I wasn't able to tell this in the chapter because the publisher was strict about not including my own, stories or my, about the investigations. They wanted more of the history aspect of it. So we went out there, and the group, some of the group arrived early, and I was taking my medium Blaine through there first, and he was like, "Oh, something just grabbed the back of my neck." He was standing at this particular grave, and he's like, "Oh, I don't like that. This spirit is not good." And then the second, group arrived with the team, and I didn't tell them anything about it. Took them to the grave, and one of the men, got very pale, and he was like, "Something just grabbed the back of my neck." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." And as the night progressed, we saw a very tall shadow figure dash out behind one of the tombstones. And then as we got even further into the night, my medium, he's never done this before, but he looked at me, he said, "We have to leave, and we have to leave now." But he didn't tell me why. The next morning, we just packed up and left. And the next morning he called me. He said, "Kim, I didn't want to frighten you, that there was a spirit there. He was yelling at me that he was going to harm you if you didn't leave." He said, I've never had to do that before, but, it was time for us to go." So there is definitely something very negative there. I don't know who or what or why, but it's a creepy place.
How do you go about getting permission to do what you do?
A lot of times you can just call the owner. Now, in the case of cemeteries, if it's on public land, there's usually not a problem with being there, especially during the day. And a lot of times when we go, we won't stay too late at night, just out of respect for, any neighbors that may be around there. But if it's on private property, definitely have to get the owner's permission before you go out there. And a lot of times it's a lot easier than people think. The very first paranormal team that I was on, their philosophy was, don't bother asking, just trespass. I was always kind of uncomfortable about that. So, you know, I always try to get permission, and it's quite easier than most people realize.
Yeah. What now? My goodness, there's so many questions I want to talk to you about, Kim. And there's so many experiences I've had, and like I say, even though I've had what some people would call phenomenal experiences, I'm still forever the skeptic. Does that make me crazy or what?
No, I'm the same way. Even when something happens to me and I physically feel something touch me or hear something, I still, will doubt myself and doubt what I just experienced. And, it's just the skeptical, logical side of us. I suppose it's hard.
So when you're out here doing these investigations, and how many do you do a year? I know you've only been at it for a short time, 2 or 3 years, but you've become pretty popular in a short period of time with this. So how many do you do a year?
I don't even know. I would have to go back and count the case files, but there was a period of about 6 months last year where we were going 2 to 3 times a month, and we were just completely overwhelmed with cases and families crying out for help. So it left very little time for us to do the fun investigations, the ones that are purely for our own enjoyment and curiosity. And we had to deal with some very heavy stuff last year. There was one case in Goodwater, Alabama, and the man that we helped, Brandon, he's given us permission just to talk about it and share his story. His house that he was living in was built on top of a battleground from the War of 1812. And this particular battle happened in 1814, and it was between Andrew Jackson and some Hostile Creek Indians. And when they were excavating and building the house in the 1960s, they actually found a sword like Andrew Jackson's men would have been using. So it was definitely right there where his property is. And there's a historical marker pretty much at the end of his driveway that is, that gives the details of this event that happened. But he was experiencing something that he could only describe as humanoid, but with bird-like wings and talons and a bird head.
Sounds like Mothman.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. At first, it was kind of creeping me out about the whole Mothman thing, but it was coming to him almost every night, and it was physically attacking him. He had been choked so hard that it actually caused the damage, and he took pictures and showed us where it looked like a rope had been tied around his neck. I mean, there was red marks around his neck. So he wasn't sleeping. Obviously, he was terrified. He had done a few recordings himself before we got there, and he was capturing growls on his voice recorder. So, we go in and we caught some interesting things. The spirit box is one of our tools that we love to use. My investigator, Kat, asked the spirit box, who is in Brandon's room? And the response is clear as day, and it's on our website if you go under evidence. So the response is clear as day, and it says dead man. And then we got another response about, we were trying to get in touch with maybe some Native American spirits that might be there. And we asked, what did the white man do to you? And the spirit box replied, burn. And there was actually a massacre not too far from there that happened during this time of the War of 1812, which is very tragic, where the Native American village of the Hillaby tribe had surrendered, but their message did not get to one of the generals in time. So he swooped in to massacre them. They thought they were coming to be friendly, so the women and children run out to greet the soldiers that are coming towards them, only to be struck down and slaughtered. So, there's just some, terrible history there. And, it's no wonder. It was the 200th anniversary of this horrible event, and it's no wonder he was experiencing these horrible things happening to him.
The author of All in Shelby County, and the group he's in the middle of telling this very exciting story. I have lost her. Kim, if you can hear me, I guess call back in, because I cannot hear you at all. I'm shooting you and I'm going to bring you back. Let's see. Do I have you back, Kim? For some reason, I have totally lost her. The powers that be, the poltergeist. Yes, you dropped. So call back in, Kim, if you're there. And we'll continue this interview. No big deal. We have strange things happen on Abnormal Radio, where we stream live at abnormalradio.net. And Kim, I think that the powers that be stepped in and blocked what you were telling us.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Kim, I cannot hear you. Are you there? I've got you on the line according to my screen. Oh. Okay, I think I hit a button wrong. I'm sorry. Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me now?
I can. I think that was my mistake and not yours. I'm looking at the computer screen and everything else, and it's like, what is going on? But this is Abnormal Radio, where the abnormal happens. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to plug back in. Hold on just a second.
Okay. Yeah,
okay,
and
can
all
you still
the
hear me?
I can still hear you. All these
Okay,
shows,
good.
your interview, Kim, will be archived on our Facebook page. If you go to Facebook and look for Abnormal Radio, this show, all this interview will be archived there. As long as there's an internet and a Facebook, you can listen to Kim talk about what she does and these wonderful stories that she's sharing. A lot of history and a lot of wonderful, strange happenings in Alabama. So where were we, Kim?
Well, I was telling you about the man down in Goodwater. How far did we get into the story before I cut out?
You know what? I cannot tell you. I kind of freaked out when I lost you and I forgot where we were.
Okay, no problem. Well, I was just telling you the story of Brandon and how his house was built on the battlefield of this War of 1812 battle between Andrew Jackson and some hostile Creek Indians. And I was explaining, I think I heard you say it sounded like Mothman, the way that he described this being that was visiting him every night and physically attacking him. So
Right.
There was just some really horrible history that took place there. There were some, not just the battle, but there was a massacre of the Hillabee tribe not too far from there, somewhere in the area. So I was just saying that, we got some very interesting responses on our spirit box, which is one of the tools that we use. And for those of you that don't know what spirit box is, it's a AM/FM radio that's been hacked to scan multiple stations per second. So you're kind of using the white noise and the radio stations to turn up responses. And again, talking about being skeptical, I was very skeptical of this device when we first started using it, but I've heard so many clear and accurate responses and pretty much on par with what we were asking that it's kind of hard for me to not give it some credit. One of those responses at Brandon's house was we asked who was in his room, and the voice very clearly said dead man. So it was just a very interesting night, and we had a good friend of ours, Art Wade, who he wouldn't call himself a shaman, but he's, that's the best way for me to describe him to people who don't really understand what we do. And he's very rooted in his Native American history of his family, and he uses some of those techniques to get rid of evil spirits. So we brought him in, and he was able to get rid of it, whatever it was. And to this day, Brandon has been able to sleep just fine. He has not been attacked ever since, and that was last year. So, I don't understand how this works, with us clearing and doing blessings and helping people get rid of spirits. But, I'll continue to do it if it helps. So
My experience is quite simple, Kim. Faith can be a very important thing, and it's everybody, because of culture or time and place where they were born, has faith in a kind of a different way. But it seems that whatever they have their faith in will work for them. Does that make sense to you?
yeah. And we cater to that. If you're a Christian, we'll bring our holy water. We'll do a Christian blessing. If you're not, or if you're Christian and you're open to some, maybe some other ideas that some other tools we might use, and we may do a Native American blessing on top of the Christian blessing, just to make sure we doubly get rid of it. So we pick.
Yeah. Do you remember this show? And I don't know if it's still out, but where the Paranormal Kids, it had Chip Coffee on it.
Yeah, was it Paranormal State with Brian Buell?
No, what Paranormal State? There was another one that just dealt with kids that had experiences.
Oh, like Psychic Kids or something like that. Yeah, I'm familiar.
So I had one of the mothers of the kids contact me. I was part of a group, a national group called Paranormal Clergy, and so the mother contacted me subsequent to being on that show, and they were still having these issues. And I just kind of a chuckle, because we were talking about, and she was over in Georgia, and she had been on that show with Chip Coffee, and we were trying to help her out from a distance without traveling to her residence. And I was telling her, to go to the Catholic Church to get holy water and this sort of thing. And so she coined the phrase "spray and pray."
Yeah.
But it's almost like whatever works. I want to draw attention, your website, scareofal.com, real simple, scareofal.com. And under evidence, you've got a lot of clips of these EVPs that you've caught that are well worth listening to. And I did not take the time to try to download them or anything else, because you can simply go to that website and click on evidence. He's got a few of them for Sloss Furnaces and the Goodwater House home, and a few other events there that's worthy of giving your attention to. How many chapters are in your book, Haunted Shelby County?
It's a little over 25 stories. So there's plenty there to keep you occupied. What part of Shelby County? In what general area are you from, Dr. Kelsey?
I'm off of Old Smoky Road here in Alabaster.
In Alabaster, okay, yeah. I did have one story from Alabaster about the old Buck Creek Mill site. Now the mill itself doesn't stand anymore, but there is a little old 2-cell jailhouse that is there right underneath the water tower. And I had the best time going out there to the seniors, I don't want to call it a senior home, but it's the activity center where the seniors go during the day, and I interviewed numerous former employees of the mill, and I had heard that there was a red-eyed phantom that haunts the woods and haunts the area where the mill used to be. So I went out there just to interview these folks to see if they had any stories that might help me understand why a phantom would be out there. And yeah, they really didn't have anything bad to say or any kind of horrible tragedy. Like the worst thing I think that happened was a couple of people lost a finger in some of the equipment. So I really didn't find anything to explain what might have been going on with this phantom out there at the time that I wrote the story.
If
But,
I
you know,
lost a finger, my finger would be haunting you.
Yeah, maybe the phantom is just, all the lost fingers.
You know, we're in the South, we're in Alabama, of course, and you've got a chapter here on Elvis at the Visitor Center. Tell us something about Elvis.
Wow, there wasn't a lot to that story, and I was like, oh, this is kind of hard to believe that Elvis's ghost would actually be haunting the visitor center. But the story goes is that late one night there were some painters doing some work after hours, and they just had this crazy experience where they felt like Elvis's ghost was there with them. And there was actually a little bit of history about Elvis visiting the town of Leeds as he was going on his various tours. He's actually stopped in at a diner there, which isn't there anymore, but there used to be a local diner there that was known for some good food, and he had actually stopped in there one day and eaten. He may have even visited the visitor center, who knows? But I guess that's where the idea came that that's whose ghost it was. So it's just kind of interesting, kind of funny, and I just thought that was cute enough I would include that story.
Now, yeah, any Elvis story down here is going to be real good, and there's no doubt. So now you're working on your book, Haunted Talladega. How many stories do you have for that book so far?
Well, we have over 30 stories. Now, not all of those will probably be developed enough that we can include them in the book, but we have over 30 leads basically, and have written numerous of those stories already in progress. But there's a lot of good stuff coming out from Talladega County. One of the things that I noticed about Talladega County versus Shelby County is that there's a good many more urban legends. Maybe they aren't really particularly based on facts or history, but Talladega County has a ton of legends, and I just love how people are very passionate sometimes about these legends. And, in particular, Gloria's Bridge in Childersburg. Now, this is apparently a legend that goes back to the 1940s and on up. Shane grew up with this legend and going out to Gloria's Bridge, and you say her name 3 times while standing on the bridge at midnight, she supposedly appears. And supposedly Gloria was, a young woman who died either falling off the bridge or being run over on the bridge. There's like numerous versions of this legend. I recently posted a photo. We were granted permission and taken by some family members to the old Gloria's Bridge that has since been gated off and no one can go on it anymore. I posted some photos of that on Facebook, and it became clear that there was a divide between some of the audience about this bridge that I posted and another bridge in the area being which one was the real Gloria's Bridge. So a good bit of people grew up with the one in Childersburg that I posted a photo of on Facebook, but some others argued saying it was the Coleman Road Bridge. And people get very passionate about this argument. I had a woman post on my timeline to tell me that I had stolen her memories for posting that photo of the wrong bridge. So yeah, we've caught some heat, but we're just doing the best that we can to document the local folklore. And the majority of the people say that it's the one particular bridge that we went and photographed, and I'm just going to have to go with that. And we'll definitely acknowledge that there is another group of people that believe it to be a different one, but it's just kind of sad that that this happens over time when it's not actually documented and written down. The stories get changed and forgotten, and the locations get confused, and so hopefully our book will be a chance for us to document and maybe set the record straight, or maybe just add to the confusion. I don't know.
Well, I think that this type of storytelling for history makes it more interesting. There's an element of us out here that will tune into history better with this kind of storytelling.
Absolutely.
We are back at the top of the hour. I know you find it hard to believe, but we talk for an hour, and every 30 minutes I like for you to shamelessly self-promote, tell people where to buy your book and how to get a hold of you.
Okay. So the main way to get a hold of us is through our website, which is www.scareofal.com. You can sign up on our website to receive emails about events and other things that we'll be doing. You can also get to us on Facebook through Haunted Talladega and Haunted Shelby County, Alabama. And my book, Haunted Shelby County, is on Amazon, and it's also in local bookstores in the Birmingham area. So that's how you can get in touch with us.
And I have to tell you, I've downloaded the book. I've got it on my Kindle from Amazon, and it is a good read. You're a good writer, and it's a very interesting read. We talked briefly on the phone before, and we talked in other areas. Well, first of all, before I go there, Kim, give us a teaser about what we can expect from Haunted Talladega.
Okay, well, there's some really fantastic history in Talladega. We're going to be covering the haunting at the Talladega Courthouse, and some history about a legal case that actually set the standard for the insanity defense. I couldn't believe that the little town of Talladega was where the insanity defense actually originated. So we're going to tell the story of how that all came about and what happened there outside the courthouse that caused all of that to come about. Some of the other places that we're going to talk about are Cemetery Mountain, and with the Mulgi Grist Mill. There's a covered bridge there as well, but when I started researching that particular site, I didn't realize that this place has a long, long history of hauntings and sightings. So that date back to the 1940s. So it is one of those bona fide places that is really, truly haunted. We're also going to talk about the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind. There's a great story about its founder haunting Manning Hall there on campus. So, and we're even going to cover a few personal homes in the Talladega area. There's some along South Street. If you've ever been to Talladega and gone to the Silk Stocking District, the beautiful homes there, we have a few stories that have come from there that we'll be telling. And I'm just excited. And one of the places that kind of surprised me is the little town of Munford in Talladega County. You just don't, you pass by the sign on I-20 and you don't really think much about it, but there is some deep history and some some really interesting things that have happened there. We're going to be going to an old plantation, the McElderry plantation, that the property was purchased from Chief Cheneby. So there's that story, and then the old Bethlehem Church right there in Munford is haunted. And one of the interesting things about the man who helped found that church is that he took a couple of trips and was actually, his family committed him to the old Bryce mental hospital. So he wrote a book about his experience and about the horrible things that he encountered inside that mental hospital way back when it was first opened. So we're going to talk about that and share some of his story. So there's just so many interesting things.
Alabama has such deep, rich history, and over the years I've read a lot of interesting things, but our history goes back way before us white folks showed up here, when it was all Indian territory. Do you get into any of the Indian tales?
We do, and Talladega has quite a few of them. The word Talladega is an Indian word meaning border town, and it was literally the border between the white settlement and the Native Americans when it was founded. So there's quite a few Indian tales. One that many people from Talladega grew up with was the tale of the Sleeping Giant, which is a mountain that you can see from Talladega that looks like a man laying on his back. And the tale goes that it was love, two young lovers that were not allowed to marry each other, and the young man was killed, and he was the one that became the sleeping giant. His body turned into a mountain. So most people grew up reading Grace Jamison's version of that story. So we've got a picture of it, and I think we're going to share that story as well. Just because you can't, that's just one of the the important tales that people are going to expect to see in this book. So we've got to include that one.
Part of what you were just saying, I officiate as a minister over a lot of weddings, and a lot of people don't understand the history of the marriage license and don't understand how not far back in our history it was actually illegal to marry outside your race. And that kind of ties in with what you're saying in that story.
Yeah, exactly. And this tale was two Native Americans that were trying to marry each other, but there was an older chief that was quite jealous that the young woman was falling in love with this young Indian, and he saw to it that he murdered his competition, basically. So, but yeah,
that kind of story, boy, that story has been deep in our history throughout mankind in general.
Yeah.
In our brief conversation on the phone in preparation for this interview, Kim, we talked, and I'm going to deviate now a little bit from your books. But first of all, let me say, you can get our book, Haunted Shelby County. I got my copy on digital form from Amazon, and you can get it at Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, and a few other bookstores here locally. It's very inexpensive book. It's well worth the read. It's very entertaining. If nothing else, it's a good book to read stories from come Halloween and you're sitting around a fireplace or whatever to entertain yourselves with. It's a good way to learn history. But we talked briefly, Kim, and it's amazing to me the UFO stories in Alabama. And I'm sure probably by now you're familiar with the stories around Fife, Alabama.
I did read something about that recently, and wow, I did not know that there was a long history and some really incredible stories of UFOs here in Alabama. But it doesn't surprise me, to be honest.
And I had to chuckle the first time I ran across that story, and I was born and raised in Alabama, so I can pick on my state, right?
Yeah.
And I had to chuckle because Fife, Alabama, the first thing that popped into my mind was Barney Fife from Andy Griffith.
Oh, yes. Exactly.
But I had, and if you don't mind me sharing a couple of stories with you, a few years ago up on Simmons Mountain up in Springville, Odenville, Alabama, where I was playing mountain man in a cabin for a period of time, I had a very unique UFO story. And what happened, I'd gone to bed one night, and in the middle of the night, someone came banging on my front door. And I groggily got up to answer the door, and it was this scruffy-looking tow truck driver that said he was there to repossess a blue Mazda from me. And in my groggy state, I explained I've never owned a Mazda. There's no Mazda on the property. You're at the wrong place. And I kind of slammed the door in his face and went back to bed. A little bit later, the door banged again. It was this time he and a partner with two tow trucks, and they're demanding about this Mazda. And by this point, I'm getting pretty irate, and told him I was going to call the police and to get off my property. Subsequent to that, I went back to bed, and it happened again. I went back, and this time it looked like the police, except they were plain clothes. And so I opened the door and walked out onto my deck. And the first thing I noted was this big oval-shaped craft that I could only see the leading edge of coming over my property, with two of these black military helicopters whizzing around it. But the craft was so big that the military helicopters looked like little miniature toys. And about that time, I was thrown to my deck, face down, somebody's knee in my back, and I felt a needle go into my neck. And the next thing that I know is I woke up in my bed, grabbing my neck, feeling the pain.
Wow.
And that's my Men in Black story, if you will. But that was so vivid, so real, and strangely enough, subsequent to that, as I was up at the front end of the property mowing grass and cleaning where people throw debris from the road, and I found the hub of a Mazda wheel cap.
How bizarre.
So I cannot explain that, but
yeah. What is your take on was it just the needle in the neck? Was that just some kind of sedative to knock you out, or what do you think happened there?
Well, it's one of those things. I'm like you. I'm a born skeptic. I ask too many questions and don't get enough answers. So I know that was very real. It was HD quality, if you know what I'm saying, and very vivid. I remember it all these years. It was just so real. When I woke up, it was daylight, well after the event happened, and I could still feel the prick in the back of my neck. And my thought clearly was that their forgetful drug did not work on me, because that craft was so big and so silent, floating over the property on top of Simmons Mountain there, that I could not see the back of it. I could only see the leading edge of this oval-shaped craft just floating across my property, being escorted, if you will, across through there. And the only thing I could surmise from it was that, given my odd hours of sleep and whatnot, that they were sent these so-called repossessed guys to make sure that you weren't aware of what's going on over your head in the middle of the night. I had another experience subsequent to that, coming back through Birmingham from the Gulf Coast one night, and I saw a craft over some houses around the Irondale area there. I've had more than one UFO experience, and I've had more than one paranormal experience as far as what we would commonly call ghosts are concerned. And after all that, Kim, I'm still sitting there saying, I don't know, I can't answer, and I'm not sure what I believe.
And I'm the exact same way. I always, this kind of work and research just leaves you with more questions at the end of the day than answers. So,
yeah. And in conversations around Birmingham and whatnot, a couple of steel workers that worked in a steel plant in East Birmingham were telling me that they were out for a smoke break behind the steel plant, and there's a lake to the back of it, and they actually witnessed a craft coming out of the lake. So I've heard all kind of stories just from conversations like that. Yeah, and it's almost, it's just really strange. And of course, my take on that end of it is, I think it would be pretty narcissistic of us to think that we're the only ones in the universe, given the vastness of the universe.
Yeah, very true. And that's the one thing that's kind of paranormal or what have you that kind of scares me, like UFOs and aliens. I don't know. I'm like really kind of afraid of that. I think I would flip out if I saw something like that.
Well, I'm crazy. I'm one of those that will stand out in the middle of an open field and say, "Beam me up."
No thanks. Now I would love to like go with you and whatnot, but I might be heading for the hills if we actually see something. No, ghosts don't bother me.
You'd be the one with a camera in your hand taking pictures hiding in the bushes.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's been all kind of experiences. I don't know why this has always fascinated me, but these kind of stories and paranormal, spirits, even vampires and so forth, all those things have always fascinated me. And so that's why I was attracted, of course, to your writings. Okay, so I was just given a note here that my two little dogs, Molly and Susie, said they feel that ghosts are about.
Oh, really?
So,
are they acting strange?
I guess do you find in your paranormal research, have you noted that animals and little children are more sensitive to these kind of things?
Yes, definitely. Animals will act strange. They'll bark, they'll growl, they'll look at things that we can't see, which is kind of unnerving when they do that. I definitely think they are sensing and hearing and seeing things that we cannot see. And then children especially, my take on that is that, they're just more open than we are as adults to the spirit world. They haven't been conditioned to block it out, that it's not real, and that sort of thing. So they pick up on it easier. I've experienced that with my own 3 children. My oldest son had the hardest time when we lived in the haunted house in Chelsea. And he was between the age of 5 and 10 when we lived there. And when he was about 7 is when he stopped being able to sleep at night. It was so bad that I would wake up in the middle of the night to get a drink. I was pregnant or, needed something to eat in the middle of the night. And I would find him sitting up on the couch, wide awake, and be like, "Hey, Mom, I can't sleep." And, this went on for about 6 months, and I finally took him to the doctor because I was really concerned. Young children should be sleeping and able to, not have anxiety about going to bed. And, he was hearing things, and I didn't understand what was really happening to him. So I took him to the doctor and explained to her that he was hearing things and couldn't sleep. And the doctor looked at him and said, Lucas, tell me what's going on. And this is the first time that he ever said anything like this to us or to me. But he said, well, I'm just seeing people that no one else can see. And I was floored. I was shocked. I was embarrassed because he's saying this in front of a doctor, and he's never told me this before. And, she was really cool about it. I was very thankful that we had a great doctor that, seemed surprisingly calm and okay with this. I guess they probably hear it, these kinds of things from children that they see, much more than anyone else. But she very calmly just went through a mental health checklist and asked him a bunch of questions to make sure this wasn't a mental health issue. And at the end of it, she's like, Mom, I don't think there's anything wrong with him, with his mental health. She said, but we need to get him to be able to sleep at night. And so we just worked towards that goal of helping him get some healthy sleep. We gave him a little Benadryl just to kind of get the ball rolling so that he could sleep at night. And the main thing, though, and this is what was the craziest thing, the main thing that finally got him to be able to sleep was he finally told me that he was seeing something in his mirror. He has this dresser with this large mirror on top of it. And he said, Mom, there's something in that mirror that is, what was the word he used? I think is mocking me. And he was only like 6 or 7 years old. And I was like, that's so odd that he would use that word. But, I was like, fine, that's easy, and the next night I had the mirror out and it was covered up and in the basement, and, you never saw it again. And honestly, after 6 months of him not sleeping, he started sleeping like a baby and not needing anything else to help him sleep. I just couldn't explain it. That was the strangest thing. I've since learned that mirrors can be portals to the other side, or so some people believe.
Are you familiar with Dr. Moody?
I am not.
Okay, he lives over in Georgia now, but he's an Alabama boy, old man like me. And he's the one that coined the phrase near-death experience.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he's the one that wrote the book on that. There's a website called Life After Life, lifeafterlife.com. But Raymond Moody, Dr. Raymond Moody, if you're not familiar with him, you should look into some of his information. You're talking about mirrors, and have you heard the term scrying mirrors?
No, I haven't.
I got to give you an education. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please do. Please.
But read about Dr. Raymond Moody and the psychometrian, and you'll find all that information instead of me trying to spell that for you if you look for Dr. Raymond Moody. But he wrote the book. He's the one that coined the phrase. And, we started the show off you talking about your family member that had that near-death experience. And he's the one that actually coined those terms in his writings. So you would be very fascinated with him. So where do we go from here? We're at the bottom of the hour. We've got 30 minutes left. This is Abnormal Radio. We stream live at abnormalradio.net. If you've got a story you would like to share or talk to Kim, call 516-387-1801. This is your last 30 minutes to do so. And very, very talented writer. And she's put forth a lot of effort in her research around here and now in Talladega County. Where do we go from here? Are you going to cover some other areas of Alabama?
Oh, sure. We can talk about a particular case down in Rockford, Alabama, that has just recently taken a very interesting turn for us. We actually worked this case 3 years ago, and it was a family that I knew personally that was living in a rental home. And one of the first things they kind of noticed about the house when they were checking it out to see if they wanted to live there was, well, first of all, the family that had been living there had just moved out. They left a ton of things behind, like they just left in the middle of the night. So that should have probably been red flag number one. But the second thing they thought was really weird was the entire upstairs of the home was painted this light blue color, from the baseboard to the ceiling to the doorknobs and trim and doors and the electrical outlet color. I mean, everything was painted this strange, this light blue color. Well, after they lived in the home for a while and started experiencing some kind of unsettling things, they lifted up and they realized that color was called paint blue. And in the African American communities, it's believed that this paint blue color confuses spirits and releases them and keeps them from being able to get trapped in your home. So then they started really getting concerned that what they were experiencing was actually paranormal. One of the things that happened early on was they had one of those old intercom radio systems built into the house, which is pretty common in the 70s. And the woman that lived there, she used to leave the Christian radio station on all day as she was working in the house. She was a stay-at-home mom. Her kids were in school one day. She left out to, run some errands. And when she came back home, the station had changed. It was blaring loud. It turned all the way up, and it was on like a heavy metal music station. And she tried to change the station. She tried to turn the volume down, and it wasn't working. She literally got so desperate that she pulled it off the wall to make it stop. And then she found a cross that she had made and hand painted for her daughter's room. It was turned upside down. Her son, who was autistic, and he was verbal, but he wasn't able to explain himself very well. When they moved into the house, he developed this unusual fear of mirrors and anything reflective, any kind of surface that was reflective. He would try to cover it with a sheet or a towel. They were hearing whispering and voices and things like that. But the thing that made them finally agree to let my team come in and investigate this house was one night she was asleep and she woke up to the sensation that she was being choked. She couldn't breathe. And she knew that the spirit that was doing this to her was also doing it to her daughter as well at the same time. So she was completely panicked. When it finally released her, she sat up on the side of her bed and she was trying to make sense of what happened. And immediately her daughter, who was about 20 months old at the time, woke up screaming bloody murder in her bed. So it just really validated and confirmed that this is something very evil that was happening in this home.
Wow.
So, yeah.
On your blurb here, you talk about, now everybody's got to be interested in this. Shelby County has a rich history that includes legends of buried treasure. Now, I want to know, where the hell can I find some buried treasure?
Harpersville, and somewhere around the old Baker Farm. If you've ever been there to get a pumpkin during Halloween or a Christmas tree during Christmas, supposedly somewhere on that land there's some buried gold. And the legend has something to do with like a buggy or a carriage that overturned and spilled the gold, and they had to bury it until they could, find some way to transport it. So, we came across similar stories in Calera, over at the old Shelby Springs Manor. Supposedly, there's a train track that runs right in front of the old Shelby Springs place, and supposedly the Confederates were transporting some gold, and the train derailed, and they had to bury the gold nearby until they could come back and get it. So you kind of get the same kind of repetitive type story, but and then you get the legends of the Indian gold. Supposedly somewhere between Talladega County and Shelby County, there was a cave that someone found that was filled with gold from Native Americans. And, there's a story about somewhere near the DeSoto Caverns as well, a secret cave being filled with gold. So it's just interesting. I don't think there's a lot of merit maybe to these stories. There's been plenty of people to try to find the gold and have dug up, these poor people's property over the years, and they've never found anything. So I don't recommend you trying to go out there at night and try to find it. I really don't think it's there anymore, but it's very interesting. One family told us of a story they lived in Talladega County where they were playing, the children were playing in a bedroom upstairs in this really old home, and something happened where one of them tripped and they fell into a wall and punctured, the wall. So when they looked behind the wall, they found where the previous family from a long time ago had stashed like ham. They had like a cured smoked ham in there and some Confederate money. So, sometimes I guess there is some truth to these treasures or this buried money stories, but, not a lot of people, claiming the treasure and finding it today.
So what do you think about writing a book about UFOs in Alabama?
I would think that would be very interesting. I don't know enough about it, but I think that would be a great topic. I would love to know more. I mean, truly, it scares me. It scares me, but I think that would be a good way to face my fear.
Yeah, give me a call sometime, and let's talk about it, and we can see if I can help you out with some stories.
Absolutely.
And I want to, privately, I don't want to take your time away from you, but Dr. Raymond Moody, because your interest in the paranormal started out in great part because of a relative's near-death experience, I want to lead you to the Psychomantium, which is Dr. Raymond Moody's version of a scrying mirror. And when you have time and you want to give me a call, I'll talk to you a little bit about that to help you do some research on that.
Okay, that would be so interesting because that might answer some questions I have about that mirror. And I still have that mirror. I didn't get rid of it. I just keep it in storage.
The scrying mirror was back literally thousands of years. So it's very ancient and still in use in a lot of areas, to the point, like I said, to where Dr. Moody updated it and kind of gave his take on it recently in recent years. But that might be something you're interested in. We talked briefly about some history down in Okahaba and Selma. I know there's books, probably multiple books written about Selma, Alabama. I believe you said you haven't had a chance to get to Okahaba yet.
No, I haven't, but I do have an opportunity coming up next month to spend the night there. So I'm going to try really hard to make that happen, and I might have some new stories for you.
Well, I would love to have you back on. When you go there, the largest building still standing used to be slaves' quarters, and from our standards, you look at what used to be slaves' quarters on that property, it looks like a little mini mansion. And I've got pictures on my website of a female figure up in the window in the daylight from walking around there, just taking pictures. And it is a boarded up building. You cannot get inside of it. It's boarded up. And there's also, you walk out into the woods, there's an old section of cemeteries where old slaves are buried. So you're going to have fun out there. There's also the remnants, just bricks laying on the ground of what used to be a Civil War prison.
Oh, very interesting. And I've been told that there might have been a Confederate prison in Talladega County near Cheaha Mountain. So I'm trying to track that down and see if I can actually go see it, because I've been told that it actually still stands. It's just an old burned out hotel from the Confederacy.
Yeah. And so you're working on the Talladega hauntings, and you've got a lot of stories. You're still wanting some more. Nobody's been bold enough to call in tonight to share anything with us, but if you hear the archive version of this show, or you're listening now and you would like to contact him privately, just go to our Facebook page or go to scareofal.com and contact her through there, and she'll be glad to privately talk to you and see what kind of stories you have to share with her, because she's when do you say you want to get that book published?
Well, the deadline for having all of our stories in is May 8th. So it's coming like a freight train.
It'll be here quick.
Yeah.
It'll be here quick.
But
Kim,
we can
you're
take
excellent.
stories. We can take stories right up to the deadline. So we'll welcome anybody that wants to share anything with us.
I do have a call. Let me get you connected here. Somebody wants to talk to you, Kim. Are you ready to take a call?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, caller, you're on the line with Kim Johnston, the author of Haunted Shelby County, Alabama. Go ahead.
Well, I haven't read your book, but I definitely intend to do so. And I also wanted to say, I heard you talk about your dogs, and when Dr. Kelsey was talking about the experience that he had with the UFO, while he was talking, I had the phone on speaker, and my dogs were in the same room, and they started going crazy and barking and howling and, you know, almost as though they were in pain the whole time that he was talking about it. And they didn't make any motion whatsoever, any noise whatsoever, just laying quietly until that story was being told. And I thought that was interesting.
It's
Wow.
only because I have a scary voice.
No, they had heard your other voice before. They had heard you talking before, and it didn't faze them.
That is so strange.
It was almost, I was almost afraid that the doorbell would ring and there would be the guy looking for the Toyota.
We've only got a few minutes left, and Kim, we have another caller. If I can go to the next caller, please. Thank you for calling in, okay? And I'm going to take the next caller. Caller, you're on the line with Kim. Go ahead.
Hi, Kim.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to say, if you go to Selma, please try, if you can, to go to the Weaver Castle.
Okay.
It is very, very haunted. My nephew and I had an opportunity to go inside one time when it was on sale, and there are multiple spirits there. There is
Are you from Selma?
No, I'm from Birmingham, but
Okay.
we went down there to look at the house, and while we were inside, we had several experiences, but there was nothing that was like scary or anything like that. But it is very filled with spirits. So if you get a chance, go in because it will be an experience you will never forget.
Can you
Oh,
give
wow.
Kim? Can you give Kim just a sample of what one of the experiences may have been?
Sure. Well, as we walked up to the house, I saw a broken window and put my camera inside and snapped a picture. And I got multiple orbs. It was a haze. And then when we got inside and we got upstairs, we heard someone walking around downstairs. And we called out and no one was there. But we also heard music and we saw things move. It's really an experience.
What's the
And
history?
Go ahead, Kim. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, what's the history of this place?
The history of the place, it was built, the Weaver Castle. If you'll look it up online, you'll see. But it was built before the Civil War. And in fact, I think some of the Union soldiers were camped out on the grounds there. And there have been several paranormal experiences. A lot of people have gone and checked it out. So it was like Rick and Bubba did, and let's see who else. Alabama Paranormal Society, I think. And it's just a great place to go if you can get in. I don't know who owns it now or anything, but just wanted to let you know about it so you can check it out.
Kim,
Thank you.
as she's talking, I'm on the internet here, and there's all kind of information about the Weaver House Castle in Selma. So you should be able to track down who you'd have to talk to get in there. And there's a lot of ghost stories. In fact, there's even a YouTube video about one of the resident ghosts at the castle.
Very good. That sounds so interesting. Thank you so much.
Well, you're
Thank
very
you,
welcome.
Ma'am, have you read Haunted Shelby County yet?
Pardon?
Have you read Kim's book, Haunted Shelby County?
No, I have not read it yet, but I am going to order it because it sounds very interesting.
It is, so I really suggest you get online. And I got my copy off Amazon, and it's a good read. So, yeah, thank you so much for calling in and sharing that with Kim.
You're very welcome, and I hope you enjoy your experience.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Kim, there's all kind of stuff. I was, growing up in Alabama, I'd never heard of Okahaba. And, of course, it ends up that was at once the state capital of Alabama.
I know. It's so interesting. It's just a lot of times we just forget the history of these places.
And as I shared with you, I don't know that you were aware of it at the time, but we have the highest ranking elected official from Alabama is buried in Selma.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And that was a vice president. His name was, I'm trying to think of his last name again. Just a second. Let me jog my memory here, but you've got to do some research on him. He's buried in a mausoleum right at the entrance of the old main cemetery there in Selma. And a couple of interesting facts about him was, number one, he was sworn in while he was in Cuba. And he was in Cuba for health care, believe it or not. His name was William Rufus King, and he served a short time before he died as vice president. And he was also, believe it or not, considered our first gay vice president.
Well, that is interesting. Now, was he openly gay, or was that kind of found out after the fact?
Well, he lived with our supposedly first gay president for 10 years up in Washington before he became vice president. He was also a senator from Alabama. Back then, there was nobody that you'd really term as openly gay. So, but it was just kind of known. I mean, when you have, back in those days, when you had two men that lived together for 10 years, it kind of told the story.
Oh, yeah. Well, that is so cool.
Yeah. So that I'm just giving you a little feed for research as you do your history in Alabama. But William Rufus King, and he died in 1853. I never knew that. They did not teach me that in Alabama schools when I went through my history classes. So now I know why they didn't teach me that in Alabama. So
yeah, so true. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but I tell you, you're going to enjoy that trip, and I'd love to have you back on after you make that journey down there and spend the night. I just think you're going to have some very exciting fun, and probably come up with some when I went there, I did not have any recording equipment with me. I just drove down there, and I had my camera, and walked around, was not there at night. And that brings about another question, Kim. In my view, ghosts, these spirits, entities, whatever they are, whatever you want to refer to them as what difference would it make to them whether it's night or day?
I don't think it matters to them. The only advantage of investigating at night is that there's this theory that these spirits are made of light, and so our equipment works good, works better at night. Our night vision cameras and things like the full spectrum camera, so that we can capture, they are truly light beings, that we can capture them hopefully at night when everything's dark. But, we get EVPs and other evidence during the day just as well. So.
Well, of course, my UFO experiences happen at night. Back a decade ago, after having lost my family, I had to take a hiatus, and I took my RV, went up to Thunder Bay, Canada, and I was sitting in my RV at a KOA campground up there, and it was in the middle of the summer. And in the back of the RV, in my bed with the windows open, looking at the night sky, I saw these strange lights moving across. The one moved across from the left and hit a certain point in the sky and disappeared. And then another one came from a totally different direction and hit the same point and disappeared. And there's been other instances, but the point is, up there's certainly no satellites up that far north that revolve around the Earth. It was coming from different directions like that. There are strange things that take place that we just don't understand.
Mhm.
And that's
Very
what
strange.
has got what's your attention. What is the name of your paranormal investigating group?
It is Spirit Communications and Research, or for short, we just call it SCARE. And we have a great group of people. We have a medium that works with us, and we have some people that are just what they like to call sensitive. So they're not like full-blown medium, but they can feel, sometimes hear spirits. I've got one lady on the team, Kat, and she has this uncanny thing where she can, she reads my mind, and she does it to other people too. But we'll just be sitting there, and all of a sudden she'll just blurt out something that I was just about to say, and it's pretty wild. I don't know how she does it, but she's pretty cool to have on the team as well. But it's a pretty fantastic group. We've been together. The majority of us have been together since 2011, and then we formed our own team in 2012. So we travel and help families as much as we can.
I've really enjoyed the 2 hours that we spent. I hope you have too. It's been interesting to hear your stories. Again, you're the author of Haunted Shelby County, and that book is available on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, your website, scareofal.com, and you do so much in this field. You're a talented writer. I hope you sell a lot of books. You've got the new book coming up, Haunted Talladega County, and I hope you get some more stories. If not, at least I hope that your book does well with that. I really hope I can get you back on for another interview sometimes, but our 2 hours is gone. We have spent it, and now the clock is ticking, and I have no choice but to say good night.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blast, and it certainly didn't feel like 2 hours, so I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much.
And if you would like to talk to me, I'd enjoy getting a phone call, message me on Facebook or whatever. I'd love to talk to you or share some things with you.